Hi there, I'm Joan Jach, and today I'm going to teach you how to make fire cider. Horseradish is a pretty awesome perennial crop. I have some of that growing in my backyard as well. I actually got it from a friend and transplanted it by the compost pile where it loves it, and it's spread, so now it's in this patch. It's about this big, and that's what I dig up every fall to put in my fire cider, because I usually make fire cider in the fall. This fall I didn't. So this is going to be fun because this is going to be the first time this year that I made fire cider. So when we're doing fire cider, there's a lot of chopping and peeling involved, and there's a lot of chopping and peeling involved of stuff that could be spicy. So garlic, onion, horseradish, hot peppers. A lot of times I will use fresh hot peppers. So if you have contacts, wear contacts. I have contacts in right now, and you're going to be chopping these things and then taking out your contacts later, you might want to wear a pair of gloves. So I have a pair of gloves here that I'm going to put on in just a second. However, whatever your favorite way to chop your garlic and onion, go ahead and start that way. I am not a chef. I wasn't trained as a chef. So the way that I do my garlic and onion is kind of just my own way that I've learned I like to do it, that works the best for me. And the garlic, I'm gonna go ahead and put one more in here. Oh, or two. That two came off of there. I'm of the mind when I put garlic and onion in things that more is more. And I really like garlic and onion. So I always put a lot in there. So for my garlic cloves, I'm just gonna smash them a little bit to make them easier to peel. I have tried to do the stainless steel bowl, and then you put a lid on it and you rattle them around in there and they're supposed to peel themselves. It's never really worked for me. So I just do it this way, and then I'll cut off the butt end where it's the flat end and peel off the peel. Then you have your garlic. Don't put it in your jar just yet, though. We're gonna slice it up. We're gonna talk about how fine to slice it. So go ahead and do however many garlic cloves you want. If you want to do the whole head, do the whole head. I know that some people don't even peel the garlic, especially if it's organic. They just cut it in half and then throw it into their jar. Sometimes I'll make broth like that, where I won't even peel the garlic and just cut it in half. But right now, I want to expose a little bit more of that garlic to get more of its immune boosting properties out. And right now I'm going to do the onion. Go ahead and peel your onion. Again, some people, they don't even peel it if it's organic. I don't recommend it if it's not organic. You always want to peel conventionally grown fruits and vegetables. All right, and I'm going to sweep all these papers off of here because we don't want to get them in our chopped up stuff. Okay. Let's start with the garlic and the onion. I can't remember if it says, yeah, so the only thing that says grated is the horseradish root. So the onion, I'm going to chop it up. I'm not chopping it up very fine. I'm chopping it up into dice. I'm not mincing it. And I'm going to talk about that when I cut up the horseradish, about the size you want everything. So chopped. If you have a canning funnel, sometimes it makes it easier to put the canning funnel on here so that you can just chuck all your ingredients in there. Otherwise, you can just use your hands as a funnel to put everything in there. Today we're using quart jars, but feel free that if you don't have a lot of people to make this for, or if you're not sure that you're going to like it, you can always make it in a pint-sized jar. I usually make it in a gallon jar because that's how much I like it, and it lasts for a really long time, especially when you store it in the refrigerator. Now we're going to chop up the garlic, and I'm not mincing this. Again, I'm not cutting this super fine. I'm cutting it basically into little discs of the garlic. I want to reveal that surface area so that all of the good stuff of the garlic can be infused into the vinegar, but I'm not mincing it. Right? Garlic is in my backyard too, usually, but it needs to be planted in the fall. So it's like a tulip bulb. You plant garlic in the fall and then you harvest it the next July. Usually garlic is planted in about, I don't know, end of October. Sometimes I've even planted it into November. I didn't plant any this year though, but I know I have some stray ones out there that'll come back. So that was about 8 cloves of garlic. Yum. Smelling good. All right, now I'm gonna put my gloves on because I'm gonna do the chili pepper and the horseradish. So horseradish, I don't know a lot of legends and lore about horseradish, but I do know that it has been used as protection, mainly by eating it. So I don't know if that's because you're eating it and you smell really strong and people don't want to be near you. Maybe that's why, but it has been known to be protective, have a protective quality, and also to have the quality of fire, probably because it's pretty spicy. So if you have never dealt with horseradish before, it's pretty tough. It's a fibrous root, and you want to take a paring knife, and it's like that ginger. If you want to get that skin off of there, it's not as thin as the ginger, but you don't want to go too deep into the root, and you want to reveal that white root. And you'll start to smell it. So get your chunk of horseradish all peeled up here. And then I'm going to take my big knife and cut it. And the horseradish is pretty hard. And this is why a lot of people like to grate it. Now here's what I'm going to tell you about grating and why I've been keeping the size of my ingredients not very fine. Because once they have soaked in that vinegar for a month and you go to strain them, you don't want to have mush. You want to have some solid pieces that you can strain out. If you grate your ingredients, and I know it says horseradish is grated here, you can grate it on the largest circle of the largest grated side of your box grater. I'm gonna cut it because I don't like, again, it's like when I didn't want to grate my ginger for the elderberry syrup. I don't want it grated because I lose some part of that mass of the root. So I'm gonna cut it up pretty into about the same size as the ginger or as the garlic that I just put in there. If you are gonna go ahead and grate the horseradish root and it is fresh and juicy, this one seems maybe like it's a little bit aged, which is, it's not as pungent. But if you are going to grate it, be prepared for a pungent smell. And it can make your eyes water. Kind of like when you cut up an onion that is a little bit old. This is the opposite. It's when you're cutting up the horseradish root and it's young. Ooh, yeah. So it can be a little bit tough, so be careful. So I just have the horseradish root grated up here. Oh yeah. This is what gives Fire Cider its characteristic pizzazz. I love it. All right. And then we're going to do our chili peppers. So the chili peppers from your kit are a kind of pepper that is similar to cayenne. So they're pretty hot. If you have fresh hot pepper, feel free to add that. Usually I'll add maybe 2 or 3 fresh hot pepper, and I'll add dried pepper. Sometimes I'll just take my crushed red pepper flakes and I'll just add a bunch in there. It just depends on what I have in the kitchen at that moment. So this hot pepper, because I have my gloves on, I am going to take it and just crumble it into the jar. If you don't have gloves, you could carefully cut it with your knife and then funnel it into the jar if you don't want to touch it with your hands. But just be careful later if you have to touch your face or your eyes or anything like that. I've learned that the hard way over the years. Okay, so now in our jar we have onion at the lower layer and garlic, horseradish root, and then the chili pepper. And I always love making fire cider because you can make some beautiful layers in here. And if you have, I've added fresh turmeric root, which is similar to ginger. It's orange, it makes a beautiful color. I've added hibiscus flowers, scaphandra berries, rose hips, I don't know if I said that, citrus. A lot of times I'll add either fresh or dried citrus. Make sure it's organic. Otherwise, if it's not, I would peel it and then put it in. But if I buy organic and that the whole, I'll chop up the citrus and I'll put it in with the peel and everything. So it just depends on what you have around, but the base of it is the onion, the garlic, the horseradish, and the hot pepper and the ginger. All right, so I'm going and I'm peeling my ginger here. It smells so good. Peeling off that brown skin. And I think that there's a note, yeah, there is a note on your recipe about the story about fire cider. So fire cider was trademarked by a corporation who was creating this same similar concoction that we're making today. There's a corporation, and then they said, we own this name, fire cider. Nobody else can make this and sell it using the name fire cider. And the herbalists were in an uproar because fire cider is part of the people's medicine. That's what we call it. It's a folk tradition. It's made with whatever you have on hand to help you and your loved ones to boost your immunity and increase the circulation. It's super tasty, and the name shouldn't be owned by anybody. So the name was in litigation for several years, and Rosemary Gladstar, who is the grandmother of herbalism and who is one of my personal heroes, was really all about this fight. So if you want to learn more about the fight for the name fire cider, you can go look up Rosemary Gladstar fire cider, and it's a pretty interesting story. And Rosemary has a book, it's called Fire Cider. And it's a whole bunch of recipes from all kinds of herbalists from all over the place, all over the world. And there are some pretty awesome recipes in there. So you can see all of the variations that there are for fire cider. All right, so we are taking our ginger, and remember, ginger has that grain in there where one way is going to be easier to slice than the other. So if you want to slice it into long strips and then turn it and go the other way, you want to do it into the same size as you did your ginger and your horseradish root, about there. Chop this guy up. You can also add your kitchen cupboard spices to here. If you have any peppercorns, if you have any star anise, you can add a cinnamon stick here if you want. Black peppercorns, mustard seed, fennel seed. All of these additions have medicinal benefits. They're all going to go in there and be extracted by the apple cider vinegar. So you can see that if you were adding more citrus and things like this, you create this lovely layered look in your jar. For your fire cider, I would recommend adding a little bit more up until the shoulder. This is what we call the shoulder of the jar, where it starts going down. I like to pack it. Some people don't. Some people like to only have it to about right here, to about half, and then add their apple cider vinegar. I like to add a little bit more because I like my fire cider to be really strong. So whether you want to add that in now or, leave it as it is for right now and come back later, whatever you want to do, I'm going to show you your this apple cider vinegar in your kit. So this is raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar with the mother. So the mother is a SCOBY, which is it's a fermentation start. So it's the same idea as how kombucha is made. If you wanted to make more apple cider vinegar, you could, and you would use this as a starter. It's like any fermented food where you're going to use a starter to make it. So when you make fire cider, please try to use organic apple cider vinegar. Don't use white vinegar. White vinegar doesn't have any medicinal properties. Raw apple cider vinegar does. We're just gonna pour it right in here. And right now I'm gonna pour it to cover because I'm gonna add a little bit. I'm actually just gonna go like this. I'll pour the whole thing. And I'm gonna add a little bit more onion and garlic when I get home. And then I can just fill up the jar. Put the lid on. Oh, sorry. You know what? This part isn't in your instructions. Because when you have a metal lid, what you need to do is get a piece of waxed paper or parchment paper and cut a little square. Put that on there first and then put the lid on. Right now I'm just gonna put this lid on so that I don't spill it because I don't have a piece of wax paper. Because that vinegar touching the metal lid can corrode it and it can leach in stuff that you don't want into your fire cider. Label this after you put the lid on, label it on the side and label on the top, especially with the date. And then find a warm place in your kitchen. Don't store this in the refrigerator. You want to store it in a place where maybe the sun will shine on it if it's possible. Somewhere where you can see it so that every day you can go up and be like, what's up, fire cider? And give it a shake. You can sing it songs, you can tell it stories, whatever you want to do, but you want to shake this, if not every day, every other day, because what you're doing is distributing all of those plants within that liquid and getting it all mixed up and getting it evenly infused. When it comes time for you to strain it, so after a month, I've left it for more than a month. I've left it for up to 2 months and that's fine. Just make sure that your wax paper is still intact. When it's time to strain it, open it up, do the same thing that we did with the elderberry syrup. Line a colander with a piece of cheesecloth, pour it, make sure you have a bowl underneath, pour it through and then really squeeze it. And then you can put all that leftover in your compost. The honey that is optional for this, you mix in as much honey as you want. I don't like to mix in honey because I like to put this on my salad, so I use it as a salad dressing, and I don't mix in honey. But some people like to mix it with honey so that they can just drink it straight up. I do also like to take it as shots, especially the kind that I make that doesn't have horseradish in it, where I make it with some other herbs like the Cassandra berries and the rose hips, because it's milder. It's still very pungent, but it's not so nose burning. And so I'll just take shots of those. You can use it as a sub for vinegar for salad dressing. Use it straight up. You can pour it when you are poured in soup, poured in stir fries. You can basically use it anywhere. And you've made your own fire cider. I think you like it. Yes, so everything gets strained. So at the very end, when you open this up, you want to line a colander with the cheesecloth and pour it in there so that all of the onion and garlic gets strained out into the cheesecloth, and all you're left with is the liquid that has been infused with those good things. So you're left with apple cider vinegar that's been infused with the medicinal qualities of all that stuff. Yeah, everything gets strained. That's a good question. So I would say at least a month, so 4 weeks. So that's why write the date on your label when you did it, or write it on the calendar, make sure, but always have a label of what it is so that nobody throws it away or drinks it or something. At least a month. If you want to go 6 weeks, you can do it. So I always say a moon cycle because that's how I like to do my herbal extractions. Is I'll make them at the new moon, I'll let them go to the next new moon, and then I'll strain them at the full moon. So that's 6 weeks. No, they will not be fermented. If it starts fermenting, I would worry that maybe one of the vegetables or onions or something you put in there maybe wasn't good. Maybe it had gone bad, but it shouldn't start fermenting. You should not drink it if it has fermented. If it's fermented, I would say start over, unless you want to strain it and try to make apple cider vinegar, and that's beyond the scope of what we're doing right now. But for right now, don't drink it if it's fermented. It'll be pretty obvious. I've never had fire cider go wrong because you're using all of these potent vegetables and putting them with vinegar. And of all the years I've been making it, I've never had it go wrong. But just test. Is it weird? Is it, does it smell weird? Is it fermenting? Is it bubbling? Does it have a weird consistency? If there's anything that's off, I would just compost it. I wouldn't try to use it. Yes, I refrigerate the final product. It makes it last longer. Of course, it is like vinegar, and it, you know, it could go in, be shelf stable in your pantry. I don't recommend it because you have added water content to it. You should refrigerate it. Yes, if you don't like horseradish, leave it out, because the horseradish is really, it is a nasal clearance. It's, if you've ever had it, it just like clears up your whole head. So if you are suffering from a cold or a flu and you need to be decongested, horseradish is excellent for that. But if you don't like it, if it's too strong for you, leave it out. And if you don't want as many onions in there, you control the ratios of everything in there. So if you want it to be a lot of citrus, have a lot of citrus, but always include that garlic, onion, hot pepper, and ginger in there.